Hey guys, I had a request to talk about scenario design, but before we do that, I wanted to say the purpose of this video is not to tell you how you should be designing scenarios. The point of this video is to show you how I personally have designed scenarios in the past and going forward. I don't profess to be an expert scenario designer. I will probably never be an expert scenario designer. I have just designed some scenarios that are interest to me, and there have been a few that have been published in MMP products, and there are probably more that will be published in the future as we work on various projects. So by no means should you take this video as me telling you how you should do something. Everybody should enjoy ASL as they want to enjoy it, and that includes how they design scenarios. All right, with that being said, let's take a look at how I go through the process of designing my not so expert scenarios. And the scenario I'm going to talk about specifically is this one here, which was published in ASL Starter Kit Expansion Pack number 3. It's called Makin Mayhem. It is a PTO, a scenario that takes place on Makin Atoll in the Gilbert Islands around the time of Guadalcanal. And the gist of the scenario is U.S. Marine Corps raiders raid this Japanese outpost on this atoll to sort of distract attention away from Guadalcanal to help that effort there. This was the first action that the U.S. Marine Corps raiders took during World War II. So it's kind of interesting to put those units into play and to see that first action. Now, the point of the scenario and the historical action was to create mayhem on this atoll to, again, pull forces or resources away from Guadalcanal to react to it. These forces arrive at the island, at the atoll, in 2 submarines, and they disembark at dawn, just before dawn. Thus, the first two scenarios have visibility rules built into it, and then they basically take rafts into shore, and at some point, the forces get divided up. That's why on the bottom half here there are two American forces. One arrives on the main beach, main area, and one arrives in a secondary area because they drifted far away, and they basically have to recombine and take this Japanese or portions of this Japanese garrison to win this scenario. Now, the source of information for this scenario was taken from this document here, which opened on some random page. It is Carlson's Marine Raiders, Makin Island, 1942, by Gordon L. Rotman, sorry. And this is published by Osprey Publishing. They publish, I mean, everyone who's designed scenarios or studies even a little bit of World War II history knows they publish lots and lots of World War II history books. And they are basically digestible World War II history. They aren't, 900-page monstrosities that you have to wade through to get information from. They cut right to the point, and they talk about, well, in this case, they talk about, well, let's just look at the table of contents. Origins, they talk about the raiders, how they were assembled, the initial strategy, the plan, the raid, the actual details of the raid itself on Makin Atoll, and the aftermath. It includes pictures, maps, units used, even individuals used, and some of their histories, like such as Carlson and Roosevelt. They have biographies biographies of these individuals. Like here's Evans Carlson's early career. They talk about him. I mean, it's not really important to the scenario design, but these Osprey Publishing books are a great resource for scenario design. At least I think so. I mean, this one is only 80 pages or so, 78 pages. Got all the information they would need to design the scenario, including maps and all the action that took place. So this is the basis for this scenario, this document here. Okay. And I'll show the map here in a minute. I kind of have it broken out and combined into one image for easier reference. Let's take a look at the map since we're talking about it. Let me see if I can pop it up here. opened on a different screen. Yeah, here is the map. So this is the morning of August 17th. Yeah, August 17th when this scenario takes place. And you can see here are the submarines that were carrying the Marine Corps Raiders. The USS Argonaut, USS Nautilus. They take no part. They have nothing to do with the actual action. It's just the historical flavor of the beginning. You know, the beginning paragraph here describes the purpose of the raid, how they got there, and how they got to the beaches and got separated. So you can see here is the line of the main force coming in here, and then here is uh, where Petros's units got separated going in, and they ended up coming in on this part of the beach, and they basically came in from both sides where this garrison, it's called Butaritari Village, but it was actually a Japanese garrison. Now there are other parts of this action which aren't modeled in the scenario. There was King's Wharf. There are several wharfs and piers in this direction, which would be, I guess, westish on the atoll. And there are actions where, after the raid started happening, the Japanese sent in a float plane of reinforcements from another island. And the Marines, I forget which wharf I think it was this wharf, I think it was King's Wharf. Yeah, seaplane ramp. It landed here, and there were actually Marines down there, and they actually took out the seaplane full of Japanese units that were coming to reinforce. Now, there was no easy way in starter kit or even ASL to model, a seaplane full of units trying to land on the lagoon side of the atoll and having Marines try to take them out. So that part is completely cut out. All that's included in this scenario is kind of this action of the U.S. Marine Corps Raiders coming in and trying to secure the garrison in this area, and reinforcements of Japanese coming from King's Wharf up this direction. They're more ad hoc type units that were responding to the Marines landing in this area. So there is the ocean side of the atoll, which is here, and then there's the lagoon side, which is the inside of the island. So at least for me personally, that's enough to design a scenario, right? I have the chapter from some sort of source material, in this case, the Osprey Publishing book. I have a map generally showing kind of the action that happened. I know the units involved is Japanese and U.S. Marine Corps Raiders, and from that we can start building a hypothetically historically accurate scenario. Now, not all scenarios are historically accurate. There has to be some basis of history, in my opinion, for the scenario to exist. But sometimes you don't know exactly what type of units were used. You don't know exactly which AFVs might be used, what have you, in a specific scenario. You just need to use your best judgment of the time frame and the location to try to build orders of battle that represent what probably happened at that time. Unless you're lucky enough to have a historical source that lists all the units that were involved from which organizations. Okay. Finding maps is really difficult, I've found. Historical maps. So in this case, this map is actually pretty good. It's a pretty decent representation of what it looked like then. So I thought this was accurate enough to try to produce a map with the seaside and the lagoon side with some simple beach rules, and basically an thin island strip situation with a garrison on it. That was enough to get me going right there. Sometimes all you need is a kind of a kernel of an idea, a little nugget, and then you can dig up the details later. Let's take a look at my design document that I use. Let's see. I use PowerPoint because I'm a huge nerd. So the front sheet of it's always a living document. The front sheet is usually shows what theoretical or possible titles for the scenario, where and when it was, and what it is at a high level, right? It's PTO. You need these rule sets. what are the basic SSRs and the source material, then the background, which was going to be the, the flavor text here. That's going to end up going in here at some point. This document is done, but it's a living document. It will grow as you go through the design process. At least this is the way it works for me. It may work differently for you. It's going to probably work differently for other people. So I have a map. This is the map of the Makin Atoll and the Makin Raid. You can see here is basically the area that I was just showing in this other map here. It's just kind of turned, and this is the whole atoll. But here's basically where the action takes place. Main force come in here. This is where the guys got separated and drifted down here, and then they had to move up here. And I'll show that in the order of battle, how that works. We already talked about this map. Then I start. First thing I do before doing orders of battle, I try to design a map that represents what I want to uh, show in the actual tactical battle. Now, sometimes some of the maps are hit and miss. I know I wanted to have beach because this had some beaches on it, both on the seaside and atoll side or lagoon side. So I've got these beach hexes. I've got, I'm calling this the lagoon side. This was like, the first idea, and then I got added more lagoon down here. Sorry, this would be the seaside here, beach. This would be the lagoon side. But then I got to wondering, well, this would probably be too complex to visualize because we're using a stock SK board, and you would have to put in the SSRs, which of these hexes are ocean or lagoon and which are beach, and trying to describe this configuration in an SSR is going to be too wordy and too complex. Even though it would be interesting from a playing area point of view, it was just going to be too much work to try to describe this for someone laying out the map. So I threw this away and kept moving on. So I came up with this map and I thought, it's probably too big for the forces that are involved here. And the forces in ASL scenarios are almost never, other than historical modules, possibly, the forces involved in most ASL scenarios, I believe, are always scaled down versions of the units that actually fought in particular battles. I would say in this scenario, the amount of units, squads involved are probably about half of what actually took place or were involved in the battle for the garrison on the Makin Atoll. Okay. Usually it gets scaled down because you want your scenarios to be reasonably sized. If you want a scenario that's quick playing, 6 turns or whatever, sometimes you just kind of have to scale down both sides to get it more reasonable. So it's a quick playing scenario instead of something really over cumbersome sometimes. So in this case here, this is probably, the units involved are probably about half of what historically were involved in this action. So I thought this was too big. I wanted something even smaller. So I took these two boards. These are boards, is that I and M or L and M? Combined them and then started cutting down the center here and saying, okay, this would be the garrison because I like this group of buildings here. There are several parts of the garrison. There was a radio shack or radio hut. There was a garrison commander's house, and there were barracks, and then there was a fuel shack or fuel depot as well. So I like this grouping of buildings here. And the problem with Starter Kit is trying to find map combinations to represent something semi-historical is really problematic. Same with the units. Unit counters I have access to, at least if you want to design for something to be played using physical components, are very limited. You have very little armor to model battles. Other than basic units, like German 467s or Russian 447s, there's quite a few of those in Starter Kit. Once you get in more exotic units like U.S. Marine Corps Raiders, the numbers of those that exist in the various modules or expansion packs are extremely limited. So designing SK scenarios can be a challenge. Full ASL, you've got everything, access to almost everything, and almost an unlimited number of counters, infantry, vehicles, guns, what have you, to design almost whatever you want. So designing for starter kit can be challenging. So from a board's point of view, I like this board, this combination with this garrison buildings here. But I couldn't have it as wide. I needed a seaside and an atoll side. So I cut it down, and then I called these, and I made it straight and called the basically the hinterland or the exterior hexes here, the beach hexes. Now it's getting close at this point. Okay, so I think this is pretty close to the final map. I decided to start building an order of battle around and victory conditions and that sort of thing. What I did is I took out the hill, right? I just said that hill does not exist. I took out this building here. That building does not exist. And I made the field, this is a stone building. I made it a wood building. And other than that, PTO terrain is in effect. Um, yeah, you've got kunai, palm trees, and light jungle here. And roads exist as well. So in the garrison, there's a radio hut, commander's residence, barracks, and the field depot. And from the victor conditions, you have to capture, I believe, all four of those. And when I started noodling with the SSRs and victor conditions, I had some other things in there like SSR2. Hex MH9 is a fuel depot. I had some weird rule I was going to try that says, if you're fighting around it or in it, if you get a KIA or a K result, there's a chance that the fuel depot blows up, right? And destroys destroys the building, the depot, and any occupants. I thought it would be fun, but it became a little maybe too much at that point. So I ended up just removing that from the SSRs. But some of the other rules that I ended up introducing were, and remember, SSRs are things that you can add that they add extra flavor to the scenario. Deviations from the core rules, new rules if you want to introduce them, but they have to be short, precise, and concise. They can't be, you have to capture the essence of what you want to do in basically a small paragraph, and sometimes that's really hard to do. That's why I think I removed this fuel depot being explosive. I took that out. So some of the rules I wanted to introduce that are above and beyond the starter kit rules, I wanted to give a little bit of a flavor of full ASL rules without going overboard. Just a little hint, just a little spice added in to the special rules to give you that feel of full ASL. The first thing I added was strafing runs by Japanese Zeros, which happened historically if you read the Carlson's Raiders book that I showed previously. In response to the Raiders' attack on the atoll, the Japanese did fly some Japanese Zeros over from another island or atoll, and they did do strafing runs at that time. So I introduced some basic rules for some strafing runs that could take place. I also wanted to introduce some really simple sniper mechanics that would trigger if you got within a certain range of the garrison commander's house. It wasn't anything complex like full ASL, but it would just give you the flavor of being harassed by snipers as you closed in on the garrison commander's house building. And that's this SSR here. I called it harassing the sniper fire. The most it could do is, I believe, this I may have changed it. I think most you could get is a pin result. There was no KIA or breaking or casualty reduction, depending on what you hit. It was basically units would get pinned. You're getting pinned down by sniper fire, harassing sniper fire as you approach the garrison, the commander's residence or the garrison commander's house here. I think you had to be within 3 hexes of it, and any units within 3 hexes, you had to make a roll, and if you some kind of check, and if you failed, you would have to make a pin task check essentially. And if you failed, you were pinned. So that's the gist of the scenario. Raiding the island, raiding the garrison, capturing those critical buildings, and adding simple strafing runs and sniper mechanics and beach rules. So basically, these beaches kind of slope away from. This is the main area. The beaches slope away. So if you're on a beach and you're fired at from a non-beach hex, you basically get a +1 TEM because it kind of slopes down. You can kind of take cover on the beach as you're running down the beach and you're being fired at from a non-beach hex or a non-adjacent hex, I believe, as well. So the Marines could use the beach to, maneuver before they move inland if they wanted to. In a nutshell, that's kind of the way beaches work in full ASL. But it's super simplified in this case. Okay, so that was version one. Once you get version one done, you pick your order of battle. Here's the main uh, Raider force that came on with Carlson. This is Lieutenant Petros's units coming in. They come in down here because they've landed on a beach down this direction, which would be down west here, and they're moving up this way. And then the main forces can come in anywhere between these green arrows in this scenario. So they can come on the beaches here, or they could have landed up here earlier, and then they can come down this direction in any approach they want. They can break up. They can come along all in one force in one area or anywhere along here, basically. So then you got your basic idea, you got your basic order of battle. Oh, here's the main garrison area, and they must set up within 4 hexes of the radio hut, at least in version one. And then the reinforcements, which are kind of, I believe historically these were like Japanese Navy guys, so I made them conscripts. It's kind of an ad hoc units that are responding to the garrison area being attacked by the Marine Corps Raiders. So you get your basic idea down. I don't even have a number of turns set. The way I do it is I don't set turns. That's probably the way most guys design scenarios, at least from early on. You you have your units, you have your special scenario rules, at least a high level. You have your basic victory conditions, and you just play it. And you'll start getting an idea of about how long the scenario should be, depending on, did you get the victory conditions? Did you get close? Did you get them too early? That'll give you an idea of how many turns it should be set to, and if you need to make tweaks to one side of the order of battle or the other. So then you play the scenario, and uh, solo playtesting early on is fine for me. You can play it really quick. You can get an idea. You don't really nitpick every tiny little rule nuance. You just make sure you get the major rules right, knock out a playtest, and it'll give you an idea how close you are. So I just make notes, what happened, right? And maybe what tweaks need to be made based on the outcome of the scenario. So then you tweak version 2. You can see here the SSRs have gotten a little bigger. I forget what I added. Oh, I think I added a machine gun nest type rule for the Japanese. I think I took out the exploding fuel depot rule. Yeah, I think I took that out already. Here's the Japanese zero strafing runs. I probably fleshed that out a little more. Here's the sniper. Yeah, and here's the special setup for getting rid of that hill and that building, etc. So then you play test it again. You just keep iterating. It's an iterative process. At this point, I narrowed it down to 7 turns. Still not set, but I thought maybe 7 turns. Keep playing. Start making more notes. Playing notes. Changes to version 3. Tweaks. Looks like I changed the strafing run firepower to 4. I don't know what it was before. On version 1, it was 6 firepower. It's probably hard to see. I think I must have got the feeling that 6 firepower is a little too overpowered, so I cut the strafing firepower down to 4. Then you playtest version 3, still 7 turns. Order of battle some of the order battles changed slightly. These went to Japanese ad hoc, went to second line. I'm starting to add more text in here, fleshing stuff out. Version 3 playtest. Okay, let's just go through the whole thing. I think we went through 7 playtests. Then at the end, you want to play, towards the end, at least I feel you need to play test with another human. So Scott and I play tested this. He also play tested it for me solo on his side. And then we play tested it together, and we both got the feeling that it was really close. In all of our playings, it could go either way. Either the Americans barely captured everything, or the Japanese barely kept the Americans from capturing everything. In all the cases, the Japanese just got devastated trying to defend the garrison. But there's no stipulation that the Japanese would only win if they lost a certain amount. It was all or nothing for the Japanese, and the Americans just had to capture those four. They had to create as much mayhem in the garrison as they could. So we got down to version 7. This was the final version, at least in my format. And I don't believe MMP made. This is the final version of MMP. Let's see, 5, 4, 2, 2, 8. Yeah, I don't think they changed anything from our final version because I know they do a quick play test as well to get an idea. I've submitted other scenarios to them where they want to make changes. I don't recall them changing really any. They may have changed a little bit of wording here and there uh, in the SSRs, but this was pretty much baked when Scott and I finished play testing it and sent it off to them. So that's basically, what are we at? We're at 30 minutes. That's basically the process that I use to design scenarios. And so far, I think it's worked pretty well for me. It's probably pretty close to what most people do. Maybe they do more or less play testing, but I think the genesis of creating a scenario is pretty much the same. You need to start with find something that's fairly historical. Try to find a map if you can. Start making assumptions on your order of battle and first build a map. Find a map if you can. Build a map using ASL geo boards. Start building an order of battle and victory conditions, and then applying special rules as you need them. And then just start doing some playtesting and iteration, right? And see if you're in the ballpark. And you'll know probably in the first playing. You'll know, one, is it fun? Two, am I even close? If one side or the other, just sticking to not the nitpick nuance of every tiny little rule, just sticking to the main core mechanics of the game and playtesting it. Did one side blow out the other or not? If they didn't, you're close, and then it's time to tweak and possibly add a little bit of flavor with some SSRs. Now, most starter kit SSR lists are not this long. I know some people hate SSRs. The purpose of this scenario and some of the others I've done for starter kit was not to make it as simple as possible, but to sprinkle a little bit of full ASL spices in it to give you the flavor of some of the rules you might see in full ASL if you go there. Like I said, simple sniper harassment, simple strafing rules, simple beaches. Those are the three that are in this scenario, and they're one oh, and low visibility, really basic low visibility, early morning dusk or dawn light, and they're basically a short paragraph each. It's not adding a whole lot of overhead to introduce that flavor of full ASL into a starter kit scenario. Now, would I recommend anyone just take up scenario design? No, you're going to have to find that space for yourself. It is a lot of work if you want to get something that plays well and is, fairly balanced. And when I say fairly balanced, I'm thinking 60-40 or better is good, right? You start getting into 70-30, 80-20, you're starting to get into something that's unbalanced and usually not fun for one side or the other. But it does take a lot of work to to design these things, and playtesting takes the longest amount of time. Even though we do them, or at least I do them solo really quickly, it still takes time. You have to set them up, you have to play them, you have to think about it, maybe take some notes, and then make some tweaks for the next version. It's not a simple task, really. So you're going to have to figure out for yourself if it's something that you would enjoy. When I'm doing it, it feels like work. When I'm done, it feels like I've accomplished something and I've contributed, to our hobby. So it always makes me feel kind of good. One of my bucket lists was to years and years ago was to get a scenario design, and then once I got one design, you kind of got that itch. Okay, what can I do next? Okay, I'll do another scenario. Then after you have a few scenarios, like, oh, maybe I could design something else, maybe a little pack and a map, which is kind of where I'm at now. I'm kind of getting at that point. So once you get the itch for designing this stuff, you either hate it or you end up embracing it. And I've kind of embraced it at this point. I'm not whole hog 100% devoted to it, but I like doing it on the side. I mean, I have a lot of other ASL stuff going on, but designing ASL is pretty fun for me. And now I've added map design as well, so I can supplement any scenario design with a map if that needed to be done. I think that's pretty much the gist of scenario design, at least my methodology. Um, Again, I am not an expert. I'm not telling you how you should design your scenarios. That's that's your own creative process to figure out. But maybe there are some pieces of information that you could glean from this video that will help you in your design process. If you have a better way of doing it and it works for you, that's excellent. That's great. I don't profess to be the know all and be all, nor do I claim, as some people believe, that I know everything right about ASL. I do not. I don't claim to be an expert in anything ASL. It is a game that I enjoy playing and talking about and making videos about and trying to help people understand and embrace the game better. That's my whole point. That's the whole reason I do all of this shit, because it takes a lot of time. I'm just trying to help people, help the community, and help the hobby. That's all I'm trying to do. Okay. Anyway, I forget who requested this, but I thought it was a good idea, and I thought I'd knock out this oh so short 37-minute video to show how I design scenarios. Look for some more. Maybe there'll be I haven't heard. Maybe there'll be a couple in the Starter Kit magazine coming out. I have a couple more in there in the multi-man publishing queue that haven't been published. Oh, one more thing I need to mention here at the end where nobody is watching. If you're still watching, make a comment below, down here, down there, that says I'm still watching, and I'll be very impressed. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to mention is the reason I design starter kit scenarios, even though I play full ASL, I still play starter kit occasionally, for fun, for entertainment. The reason I design starter kit content is it needs more content. And this has become very apparent to me when designing scenarios. And I want to design something representative of something that happened historically. I'm looking at the geographic boards available, trying to put something together that makes any remote kind of sense. And I'm trying to pull units to represent the orders of battle and maybe the vehicles that or guns that took part in said action. And man, it drives me crazy designing starter kit scenarios, which kind of doesn't make sense when I say I only design starter kit content. Well, the reason I only design starter kit content is because it needs more content. Full ASL, I mentioned this in a previous video. Scott and I have talked about it many times. Starter kit has so much content, you'd have to live 7 lifetimes to play everything, probably even more than 7 lifetimes, probably 10 lifetimes to play all the scenarios, whether we're talking MMP or third party, historical campaign games. I mean, there's probably between Multiman Publishing, Avalon Hill, all the third party, there's probably 100 historical campaign games that you could play. That will probably take up 10 lifetimes, playing all those historical campaign games. Not to mention the 7,000 scenarios from MMP, Avalon Hill, all the third party publishing, all the hobbyists that have published scenarios. ASL, I love it to death. It is not for need of any more content. Starter Kit needs content. There are a little over 100 scenarios published in Starter Kit in 20 years since Starter Kit 1 came out. Little over 20 years, I think. It needs more. It needs more maps. It needs more accessible units. And I'm not talking about Vassal. Vassal, you do Starter Kit for Vassal, you have everything open to you. As a scenario designer, if you're designing something for print, it needs to be a physical component that's available that you can slap on a table and on a board, a physical map. And Starter Kit is woefully lacking in physical components to represent orders of battle, specifically vehicles and guns. Really hard to find things. Sometimes you have to make substitutions. I designed a scenario a while ago where it's Allied minor and they had I think an anti-aircraft gun, and they did in the historical battle, and there wasn't one available, so I substituted a British anti-aircraft gun and said Belgians can use it without penalty. Just assume it's a Belgian anti-aircraft gun because there were none available. It's just hard to design for Starter Kit. That's why I only design Starter Kit, because I think it needs more content. MMP and Kurt has said in his roundtables that Starter Kit took on a life they weren't expecting. They assumed Starter Kit was going to be, a player would pick it up, play it, and go, "Oh, this is cool," and they would immediately jump to full ASL. They're finding out that that is happening in some cases, but they're finding out that a lot of Starter Kit people, and I understand it, find Starter Kit perfect for them. It's fun, it's tactical, it gives you all the rules you need to play most of ASL, just like full ASL is played. And they're happy to stay there. And I think they want more content. And that's what I'm trying to do. And that's why I will only design Starter Kit content going forward, unless for whatever reason down the road, multi-man publishing, because I'd prefer, when I submit a scenario, I prefer to work with multi-man publishing. If they decide that they're not doing Starter Kit anymore, which I don't see happening, then I'll quit doing Starter Kit. But that's why I do Starter Kit. That was a long, rambling, meandering road for me to say why I only have been designing Starter Kit content. But now you know. I've mentioned it before, but now you kind of know my rationale behind it. All right, that is it for Makin Mayhem as an example. We did an AAR for Makin Mayhem. I think it was the last play test we did. We did a video AAR of it. Sat on it for about a year until they actually published it, but that's on the channel. And then Stu from Vassling with Stu did I think it was a 2-part tactical analysis of really good analysis of the scenario on his channel, Makin Mayhem. So go check out those videos if you haven't seen them. Really good videos. Okay. All right, that's it. ASL Starter Kit scenario design process from a complete noob. Academy out.
Get to the chopper!
If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you saw, thanks for watching, and let me know how I can do better. See you in the next video.